Okay, here's another new mailbag topic. This is more about confidentiality and the sale process. Okay, so then related is how do you advertise a business without revealing its identity? Well, I ask you first when I create a teaser, could someone pick you out of a lineup from this? A lot of it has to do with location. So again, this is why like if you're in a small town, this is harder because then it's like, oh, this is a child's care in this town. How many are there? Right. And so, a buyer cares about where it is. And like that's gonna make a difference as to like who wants to buy this because location matters. Like if I live in East Tennessee, I'm not gonna buy a daycare in West Tennessee, most likely, right? So you've kind of got to say it's in the county, or maybe it's just in Middle Tennessee. But then the problem is if you say it's in Middle Tennessee, everyone's like, "Oh, that could be daycare in Nashville would be great." It's like, okay, well, this is not a daycare in Nashville; it's in this like other town. So that's kind of the big thing is kind of being vague about location really helps, and then it will attract folks who just really want to be. Um, one in Nashville in this area, but then the second group will be people who really want daycares, and then they'll have to decide if they want to be in that area. Um, so that's kind of the tough thing. And then it's just like it's a daycare, and then try not to get into too many specifics. Like if you provide a particular service that no one else does, then we got to take that out, right? Um, the other tough thing is then making the title and what the business does more vague if the revenue size could only be one one particular area. So if there's, um, maybe like some tinting businesses, like maybe there's one kind of major player who really kind of does most of the cars in the area. And so if you're like, I'm a window tinting in this area and I do this many millions of dollars, there's only one person who does that. So that's kind of you got to be careful about those attributes and what makes you unique. So the things that are like the and this kind of stings is like the top highlights of your business are often the identifiers, and you've got to kind of walk that back for the teaser. So I try to encourage buyers of like, if you would are interested in this type of business, sign the NDA so I can send you the details. So that's kind of the art behind like how do you craft the right teaser so that you maintain the confidentiality. So what should an owner expect during due diligence? They should expect to be really frustrated. Like, it is a pain. I tell everyone when I first talk to them, due diligence is a pain. You know, I think there's a balance to be struck of like you know, what all you prepare ahead of time and how far in advance. Like, I don't like sellers to be gathering everything and like, oh, we won't go live until we have every single possible thing. But there's definitely a lot of basics that like, okay, once we get everything we need to market the business and understand what it is, then we probably need like a copy of the title of your vehicle or every vehicle in there. Um, Now we need to start pulling point of sale reports for everything, right? Like so there's your granularity, like so. But again, that's just kind of some of the basics of diligence. The reason why it's such a big pain is that like you'll have 30 days, and you're kind of hard pressed to tell a buyer during diligence, no, I don't want to show that to you, right? That'll blow up a deal if you just like I'm not showing you something. Why? It's like, well, it's unreasonable. So like, if you need to see if you need to see specific receipts from 10 years ago, things that someone wouldn't really maintain because for whatever reason, you just like want to know what vendors they used before. I mean, if you have them, great. If you don't, then that's just kind of where it is. I'm just kind of using an exaggerated example for something, but that's why it's a pain is that it's everything. Like they want to come in like after hours to then hop on your computer and then walk through all the work in progress deals. Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? They're going to be taking this over, and if that's the only time you can get into the office and kind of do this just confidentially, that's going to happen. And guess what? Even as your broker, you know, I'm not going into service tie-in and driving your service tie-in instance to show people what's in it, right? Like I don't have that capability. or keys into your office. So that's where it is just a pain to do, and you've got to contact all these people. And so it's not just that; it's also that, and you're running the business, and you've got to like tell your CPA what's going on, and you're working with an attorney to build a purchase agreement, and it's like, hey, let's talk about floors and ceilings and baskets for indemnity clauses. Um, so it's a lot. That's why the what to expect in diligence is all those things that I said, but I think the number one thing to expect in diligence is that you're just gonna hate it and it sucks and it's frustrating. And then you're gonna get mad at the buyer. And you're gonna get mad at the buyer even though what they're asking for is reasonable. Like even the reasonable things, you'll just be like, they asked for so much. Why do they want this thing? It's like, well, that thing is actually they really do need that. Like if I was their advisor, I wouldn't buy this business without getting that. But it'll probably be paired with a whole bunch of other things that aren't really needed, but it's not needed because you have an asymmetric level of information. Like that's not that important. They don't know that, but they know that they won't trust you if you don't show them. That's why diligence sucks. How do you determine whether someone is a serious buyer or merely curious? Ooh. Um okay, so in I'll just refer to the buyer profile that I have people fill out when they first introduce themselves to me or they're interested in a listing. What industries would you like to buy a business in? I would like to buy a business in home services. Okay, this is a manufacturing plant. So, yeah, I don't know if you're serious. Another one on the industry front and that industry question is if they just say any, that is going to be a follow-up question of like, well, then why this business that you're looking into? Because it's not good enough that it's just any. If they say, I want to buy a business that it has at least 10 million in revenue, and if you have 5 million in revenue, they're probably not interested in you. And again, that's a question I'm asked like, well, why are you looking into this if it's below your criteria? They need to have a good reason for that. Um, I also ask, will you be absentee or semi absentee owner? If the answer is yes, and you are at your business every single day, they're either or both not interested in the business really, or they have no idea what they're doing and they don't know what they're inquiring about. And they won't answer that question, that follow up question, then they won't see the sim. Um, let's see. Another one is how much cash do you have to finance, to put as a down payment? They evade the question, there's not that much cash, and it's not enough cash to afford a down payment for the loan to buy your business at the asking price. They're probably also just kind of like curious to look at your business and they're not really that serious. And then finally is I'll ask, what lenders have you talked to? And that one's less so because, I often just introduce folks to good lenders that can work on a deal. So if someone doesn't declare that they've talked to a lender, that's not necessarily screaming at me that they're not serious, but it does, if I'm asking the question and you are a serious buyer, it shouldn't be too hard for you to list name a bank. Name any bank, right? Like, now there are some banks that are like huge where it's like, yeah, I want to buy this like, $500,000 business. And, I bank with, I don't want to call out any specific banks because they'll all say they'll do any deal if it's a good deal. Um, but, if they leave it blank, it's like, that's that one is kind of the least glaring issue. Um, But that's one where it's like it's an easy question to answer if you are serious about buying a business. So those are some of the initial things that I screen for. So those are where it's like my clients they don't even talk to those folks because they just don't even oftentimes don't get past that initial screen. Um, Another one is they can be engaged, they can say they're serious, but one thing that worries me with some buyers about, like, how serious they are is they won't get to an LOI. They'll just kinda keep asking questions, and they always need to know something more, and it's always, like, one-off questions too. It's not like, "I need to know these questions. Answer this, and I'll get to an LOI." And look, if you it's like answer this and then I answer it, and then you have like, 5, 10, whatever, many more questions, as long as you're sending it to me in kind of waves and it's like clear that we're drilling into a particular issue that you need to have resolved, that's fine. But if it's like, if you're looking through my sim and you have a question on it and then you like write me a question and then a day later you ask me another question, you're not really looking through this sim and like qualifying if you're going to buy it. You're just reading a sim and having fun asking me questions. That's probably not a serious buyer. Another one is like, hey, I think you've asked a ton of questions. They're good questions. Send me an LOI. Like you know, the I'm not having the seller pull this specific type and time range payroll report for you without an LOI. Oh, well, I need to have it. And like, I don't know if you're serious about buying, not because yeah, I think you do want to buy a business, but I don't think you're so in love and committed to this business that like you need a like specific payroll report before you can submit a non-binding letter of intent. Like, I don't know, what are you gonna find in that report that will really change your mind or be material? Of course, there are exceptions that may not be a great example because, like, you may actually need to see that payroll report for whatever reason. Maybe there's a lot of, like, family working in the business and they're on payroll. Okay, that I can see, but, just things where it's like they're dragging on taking that step of saying, "I wanna buy this business," then it's like, I don't know if you're actually serious. You may think you're serious, but I don't know if you really are. And hey, that's okay. Um, I don't hate you for it. It can be annoying. It makes my job harder, but I get it. Like, I take things pretty seriously if I'm ever about to like write $1 million, 2 million, $5 million check and start running a business. I might ask a lot of questions. But then it gets to a point where it's like, I just don't know how serious you are about buying this business. And I get it. That's fine. But we just need to move. At what point does the owner need an attorney and a CPA? I'm going to avoid this question because I don't want all the attorneys and CPAs to message me about why I'm wrong. Um, I will say that um, most attorneys that I talk to, they want to be involved sooner rather than later, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. Like if you involve an attorney pre LOI and you'll get a really good LOI. How much do you want to spend to get a really good LOI? And it goes back to that buyer seriousness question. They should be writing up the LOI, and like I don't know if we need to have attorneys negotiating that, but there's definitely a lot of value in it and you're going to get a much better LOI. And I think the larger and more complicated the deal is, the more reason there is to have an attorney at that stage or earlier. Um, Certainly can't hurt to figure out who you want to have working for you. And the reason why I bring that up is that if you have a business attorney, great. Do they do a lot of business M&A? You may have a great CPA for tax. Do they do a lot of, M&A? Um, because the prep is different, the process is different. Um, And so you want to have someone or bring on someone who kind of knows the specific thing. What I always tell people is, especially when it comes to their relationships with their CPA or financial advisor, whoever that person is, maybe the coach or the quarterback or however you want to look at it, I'm a special teams player. You need me for this one specific thing, but then you don't need me for like all other parts of your life. And I feel that way about bringing on an attorney and a CPA for some of these deals too. It's like, you need like on my special teams, I want a special teams attorney, a special teams CPA, folks who really kind of know this specific thing, and that makes sure we're getting a good deal done. And they like that CPA knows all of the different tax codes and impacts to different decisions for a business transacting, which a CPA who mostly works on taxes for operating businesses, they just don't run into that all the time. That's fine. I want that person filing my regular taxes, right? So I would say, I'm going to dodge the question of exactly when. Certainly, absolutely. By the time an LOI is being written up, you need to bring an attorney on and you will need your CPA to, start assisting. So like that is just a trigger event. Um, the earlier in your life that you can have a good attorney that can do M&A, and a CPA that can do everything for you, the better. So hopefully for all the CPAs and attorneys out there, my recommendation is the sooner the better, and go get good ones. And if you need recommendations on who good ones are, I have some opinions, and I'll be happy to share that with folks as well. And then you can do it now. Then the answer is right now. You can go get someone right now. That's really great. All right. Last one for confidentiality sales process. How do you handle meetings and site visits without alarming employees? Yeah. So this one also stinks. You go when the employees aren't there, which means it's early, or it's late, or it's weekend. Yep. I have seen it done during the day when you have an office, but then during the day, like everyone is out on jobs. So if you're in any sort of construction or home services, often if you have a retail location or an office, you can kind of push people out the door, be like, hey, go to work, go to your site. And then you can bring someone in and meet at the office and do that. But more often than not, it's, a time when no one's in that office or that space or location, which is usually when people are not working, which is usually when you don't want to be there because it's early, it's late, or it's the weekend. Um, or it could be a Monday or Tuesday during the day if you're a restaurant and like you don't operate on those days because you just want, 8 hours apiece before it becomes chaos all over again. But that 8 hours apiece we should interrupt so that we can do a site visit. And that's just how it goes. So that's why this is kind of a big decision to sell your business and why it's a pain and why it's a lot of work. Uh, and I don't really have great answers to some of these things other than to say that, yeah, it's not ideal. But that's how you avoid employees is going there on your free time when you're not working.